Hey toy fans, Aaron here. Returning now to our regularly scheduled programming, and that is reviewing toys, not only in the packaging but also loose, because getting more function here. First up, thought I'd get back to the Expanded Universe line and take a look at the Darktrooper, which was released back in 1998. This line's notable for a couple things. One, that it tackled the Expanded Universe, the video games, books, and such. And also this particular line, this subline of the Power of the Force 2 collection, the card backs transformed into this 3D pop-out scene. Taking a look first, as you see at the action figure on the card, they still came on that green card back of the Power of the Force line. Darth Vader in the upper left corner, gold Star Wars logo with that Expanded Universe notation below it. Through the blister you see the very large included action figure, its accessory, and then off to the left side you got an image of the figure that you're getting. I gotta say, I don't think that's pulled straight from the video game. That looks like too good of a file to be from that game. But nevertheless, there's an image of the trooper as we saw him from the game, his name, and then the fact that the package becomes a 3D play scene. Flipping it over to the back side, there along the top part, you got the Star Wars Expanded Universe logo. Kind of a brief write-up about the theme behind this line, what they're trying to accomplish. Off to the right, you got this index card cutout that they did for the line at that time. Obviously, this is just much smaller to accommodate the 3D pop-out scene. But it's a nice image of the Darktrooper with just a very brief description about this particular character. Middle of the packaging goes into more detail about the pop-out scene. You see an image of how that should look when it folds out. And then a write-up about the Darktrooper and the Dark Forces video game. Along the bottom, you got a handful of figures that were available in this Expanded Universe line, along with a couple of vehicles. And here's a look at that pop-out scene since we're talking about the packaging. I like what they tried to accomplish with this line of doing these pop-out displays. The printing looks really nice. It still looks like the video game, or in some of the other cases, the comic books or something. So it has that overall aesthetic to the print quality or the design of the backdrop. As you look at it from a front-on view, you have that first-person point of view that you had from the video game. His rifle sticking out, along with his shields and health and ammo display and such. Looking farther in the backdrop, through each doorway and such, the scene continues. It seems a little out of place, but I guess they're sticking with the toy theme. But instead of the Stormtrooper from the video game, they actually have a killed-off Stormtrooper using the 3 3/4-inch action figure of that time. The pop-out display holds pretty well in place. There's 2 tabs from the bottom of the card that fold up and kind of hold things into position. And then adding the action figure into the scene here kind of completes it and just makes for a cool display piece. One thing I will say is the floor of this section that, helps things pop out and fold up, just a little bit too wide for getting his legs around it. Nevertheless, you can still get him to stand in that middle position. Or if you wanted to, put him out front, but kind of destroys that whole first-person point of view thing. Enough about that, let's move on to the action figure. Keep in mind, this is 1998, so the line was just a few years old. Articulation was basic, sculpting was not bad, but that is the time frame that I'm going to look at this action figure by and talk about. So not going to compare them to, today's modern releases. And while the line when it started out in 95 was very bulky, very, basically they all look like they're on steroids. You might think that they did that with this figure, but as I recall, it obviously was a taller action figure, but it was kind of beefy looking too. So I think as far as the overall sculpt goes, it seems like they hit a lot of the main points and was pretty true to how it looked in the game. Not going to say 100% accurate, but I think overall things are looking good. And when I say he's tall, he comes in at about 4 1/4 inches, maybe just a smidge taller. Sticking him next to another figure from that time frame, you can definitely see the size difference. One thing I will say is I don't know that the colors of the figure are 100% accurate. Comes across as a pretty metallic silver, maybe some hints of blue in there. And in the video game, you might have had a mix of blue and silver. It looks like they probably tried to do some silver within the quilted patterns of the costume. It's really hard to tell. I don't know if it's a different color or if the light just happens to play differently since there's such small ridges, if I'm just getting a lot of reflection. Either way, if it is silver, it is very close to the main body. Getting into the sculpting for the helmet, overall the design seems like it's pretty accurate to me to how it looked in the video game. I'm going to remove that backpack real quick so you get a nice look at the helmet, because those big shoulders really kind of get in the way, but that helmet really flares out to the back. Very aerodynamic look to it. Black painting for the eyes on the helmet, placed right where it needs to be. You have a bit of silver painting around the mouth plate, through the bridge of the nose, and a couple red dots in there off to the side. Getting farther back on the side of the helmet, you got some black lines that you would, just traditionally see on a Stormtrooper helmet. Painting for that is mostly staying in place. Going to the chest and arms of the figure, again, sculpting looks great. The overall armor design looks pretty much how it looked in the show, so really no complaints there. Touch of black painting at the back of the elbow, and then those parts where I mentioned that was quilted pattern, this kind of how it comes across on the action figure. Those were hoses that ran, from chest underneath the arms. So that's really what we're looking at there. Through the rest of that chest, still the armor detailing continues. Got a couple round bits sculpted at the top on each side of his chest. Bit of gold painting in there. That's pretty much right where it needs to be. Without that backpack on, you've got some more sculpting detailing being done. I have no clue what that would be, but at least it's not just plain plastic. You see that rectangle up towards the top, and that is where the backpack fits in. And sliding that back on the figure, it stays snug. The flaps that come over the shoulders does swivel up and down. You have the silver portions around the waist that line up wonderful in the front of the figure where, we'll call it the belt. I know it's not a belt, but the overall design makes it look like it's sculpted right on there as one piece. Off on each side of that backpack are his little jets for flying around. Not much to speak of for detailing to the sculpt, but a nice flat black paint job. And then just some other details, some design sculpted into the rest of that backpack just to finish it off a bit. And then you get down to the legs of the figure where still that, I hate to say beefy look because it makes me think of the original 95, 96 figures. But this is the design of the character, so the look carries through. You still have some of that hosing detail sculpted on the inside of the thighs. And that is, it's much more clear at this point that those are hoses as compared to what you see at the top of the shoulders. Some joints sculpted in at the knee. Looks great, certainly not functional. This is just your basic 6-point articulated figure, but still it does look very nice. And then basically thighs, boots, just kind of looks like huge Stormtrooper armor. So yeah, sculpting looks nice. Overall pretty smooth. And like I said, paint job's looking pretty good. Getting to the articulation of the figure. First up for that jetpack, the shoulders do flip up and down. I think that really is just to make it easier for you to remove the backpack. And the jets on the side of the backpack do have some swiveling also. Due to the way the head is sculpted, you're only getting some side-to-side movement. It's a little bit limited from what I'd like to see in a figure, but not all that bad. Having the backpack on does hinder some of that shoulder movement, but you still get a decent range up and down. Without it on, you could go all the way around if you wanted. Full rotation at the waist. And the legs come straight out. And back, I'd say about a 45-degree angle. As for accessories, it does come with a big blaster rifle. It seems pretty representative to a degree of how it looked in the video game, the overall shape that is anyways. It had multiple barrels on it, which you are getting here. Not a ton of detailing to it to really help identify what's going on. Pretty par for the course, though, for the sculpting that was being done on the weapons at the time. Overall, it's done in this kind of a light gold color. He holds it pretty well in either hand. So it kind of is what it is, just a big chunk of plastic. So to kind of wrap things up here, it's a figure I really like. Certainly basic by today's standards, but for 98, really not all that bad. And being a fan of the video game back in those days, it was certainly exciting to get a figure from that video game. We even had a release of Kyle Katarn, which is the guy that you were playing in that video game. And now with having Darktroopers in The Mandalorian, you can certainly tell where some of those design elements came from. They didn't pull one-to-one, and I'd say they probably modernized things a little bit. But as I said, for this version, for the figure from the video game, it looks pretty good. So that's going to wrap this one up. As always, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this figure in the comments section below. And thanks for watching.